Bonus chapter: Adrian Pierce. Adrian looked at the person entering the Pierce Group building on the surveillance footage. She wore a white dress, her long hair reaching her waist. A bright, radiant smile bloomed on her pure, beautiful face. She stopped at the reception desk and said with a smile, "I'm the second daughter of the Hart family. My sister asked me to come find my brother-in-law." 3 seconds later, a new message popped into the notification bar. "Mr. Pierce, Miss Hart is on her way up." Adrian lightly tapped the conference table, withdrew his gaze from his phone, and continued listening to the reports from his subordinates. A meeting originally scheduled for 3 hours ended hastily in less than 2. Logan always felt something was off about his boss today. He suppressed the strange feeling and informed Adrian about the restaurant reservation. Adrian only hummed in acknowledgement, then waved his hand dismissing him. When he met Ava's smiling face under the office desk, Adrian's expression was exceptionally cold, but only he knew how turbulent the heart buried deep in his body was at this moment. This wasn't the first time he'd seen Ava in these 6 years. He'd seen her at her recent performance, but this was the first time in 6 years at such close range, and the first time in 6 years that Ava's gaze had focused on him. He knew. He'd bet correctly. This past year, he'd continuously maintained his persona in public as a devoted man who cherished Grace, all for this moment. The instant Ava pressed against him, he nearly threw all his plans aside. What he wanted was Ava's lifetime. No matter how urgent, he couldn't show a forgiving attitude so quickly. When he accidentally pushed Ava to the floor, panic flashed through his heart. His instinct was to crouch down and check Ava's injuries, but ultimately he restrained himself. He only covered Ava with his coat with a cold face and carried her out of the office. Meeting Logan outside the office, he snapped out of his daze. In the end, he only had Logan send Ava to the hospital. He drove and followed all the way to the hospital, only relaxing after confirming with Dr. Foster that Ava was fine. While at the hospital, he received a text from Logan. "Mr. Pierce, Miss Hart asked me to take her to Rosewater Lane." Adrian crossed his arms, looking at Ava in the distance who'd just gotten into the car. His lips curved slightly as he replied to Logan, "Take her there. Don't let her know I know." The fish had taken the bait. For dinner, Adrian ate with Grace as planned. During the meal, he was somewhat distracted. This feeling of eagerness to return home hadn't occurred in a long time. After dinner, he asked Grace to come to his place. Grace's cheeks flushed red as she agreed. Adrian felt nothing about this, only found it somewhat annoying. Toward anyone other than Ava, their affection brought him no pleasure. Before getting out of the car, he took out his phone to check the surveillance in the room. As he'd expected, there was a bulge on the large bed. In the past, when Ava secretly gave him surprises, she always liked to use this trick. A smile appeared on Adrian's lips. After entering the bedroom, he deliberately made noise, ensuring Ava could hear. Sure enough, as soon as Grace entered the bathroom, Ava threw off the covers. It had been a long time since he'd slept with Ava. At night, after Ava fell asleep, Adrian held her, gazing at the features of the person in his arms, his eyes filled with tender love. "Ava, you can't escape." During that year of rehabilitation after his injury, he'd fantasized about this scene every moment, returning to Ava's side, holding her as they slept. But he'd been a step too late. She'd fallen in love. Her first relationship lasted nearly a year, the second about the same. Only the third relationship lasted 2 years. But it didn't matter. They would only be passers-by in Ava's life. Only he would be the person by Ava's side for a lifetime. Her every word, true or false, hardly needed discerning. It didn't matter if she deceived him, at least it proved he had value, which was why she'd come to deceive him. After Ava returned to the country, everything went smoothly, developing in the direction he'd imagined. Only Wesley Hale was an unexpected variable. Ava was actually willing to give up making Grace miserable for his sake. She wanted to draw a clear line with him. When he said those 4 words, "We'll talk after," for an instant he'd nearly lost control of himself. At the last step, he saw the fear in her eyes. He remembered his promise to her. He would never force her. He let her go. He didn't directly cancel his engagement with Grace because he knew Ava wasn't someone who could be so compliant. Watching Grace be happy, she couldn't possibly just watch and do nothing. She would return to his side someday. He had plenty of time, enough to wait for her to turn back. The day Ava had her minor car accident, Adrian rushed to the hospital as soon as he received the news. Outside the hospital room, after hearing the Hale family's words, he understood. Wesley was about to be out of the picture, especially after he entered the room and saw Ava was awake. He did take advantage of the situation somewhat. Because Wesley couldn't accept never having children in the future, this matter had quite an impact on Ava. Perhaps in some moment she'd engaged in self-doubt, thinking that no decent family among New Harbor's elite could accept her condition. But Ava wasn't someone who would wrong herself. She wouldn't compromise. So he took the opportunity to express his view that he didn't want children either, using Hart Group shares as bait. Compared to Ava, who liked children, he really didn't like children at all. He didn't want anyone to take away Ava's attention. Because Ava liked children, after learning she couldn't have them, he'd considered adopting Lily, who resembled Ava somewhat. But ultimately, he left the choice to Ava. Ava was afraid she couldn't be responsible for a child. He also didn't want a third person inserted between them. Having Ava by his side was enough.